Wow, what a roller coaster of a game, chat. I did start off at this playthrough saying I played the game before. I remember enjoying Liu Bei campaign in particular, where you go around as a quote-unquote historical figure, even though they do very, very, very loose interpretations of what is historically accurate, of the generals in the Three Kingdom era of China, and you go through predominantly as Liu Bei, trying to save Diao Chan, who is apparently your lover in this timeline/universe. And it has a kind of cool mechanic. I will semi-spoil, there's more than one main campaign to play through, so I'll try to keep it as vague as possible for people that haven't actually played through the game and were curious about my final thoughts on it. I guess we'll start with some of the non-spoiler stuff first. The music. I really, really like the music. We're listening to it now. Fantastic. The soundtrack is unfortunately kind of short, but I feel like every song is just amazing. I would listen to this like over and over on many other games if I had the choice. The voice acting is comical. Some of it is actually really good. They have famous voice actors for some of the roles, in particular Guan Yu and Xiao Yu, voiced by characters from Metal Gear Solid and, you know, Steve Bloom and all sorts of things like that. So it has a very big range. Some of it is very funny on purpose. Some of it's funny unintentionally. So I think one of the strengths of this game is, I guess, the cutscenes. The cutscenes are so over the top. I think that's what makes the game most memorable. Maybe not the combat system, even though I think it's really good. I feel like chat seeing those ridiculous cutscenes of them flying around and like martial art fighting in the air, even in things like the duels, it's just amazing. Yeah, some of those voice actresses, in particular, Zhuge Liang's wife, very interesting choices, is the best, most modest way I can kind of phrase that. So, what is the game about? Well, I said you before, you're trying to save your lover, and you're in the middle of the War of the Three Kingdoms. So it's squad-based combat. It's an RTS on the PlayStation 1, or 2, I mean. And it is probably my favorite RTS of all time. I'm willing to state that. It's not a very pure RTS, so for people looking for something on the lines of like a, you know, something like a StarCraft, this is not the kind of game to go to. But in terms of accessibility and how they set up the controls, the strategies, excuse me, and everything else, it just felt absolutely tailor-made for the console. I loved how easy it was to navigate between troops. I loved the overview of the strategy before any major battle. I liked some of the semi-historical elements where there's basically a narrator giving you the background information on some of the battles, and then there's some cutscenes in between. And just overall, the game has a really nice flow to it. So the other thing I have to say is that there are a lot of hidden mechanics in the game, and I feel like every ability that's assigned to a general in your army, where you could go from that kind of whole army overview to controlling your squad, to controlling the general itself within the squad. I've never seen anything like that before. I would love to know if there's any other games like this, because to me, this game is so unique. I have not seen anything do anything like this game does. Like, there's elements of, yes, you've seen RTSs before, but to go from that massive army scale to you're the individual general, literally flicking people in the face with your spear or your fan or whatever you happen to be wielding, it's phenomenal. That feeling of using spells, because, you know, historically accurate in giant air quotes, as some of the strategist characters to launch fireballs or throw tornadoes or use lightning storms or open the earth up and suck troops in. All of it is satisfying. I like that there's a skill angle to it. There's not really... I don't think there's any RNG in the game, basically at all. So if you aim a skill well, it will do a lot of damage. If you take a high war ability general and fight somebody with low war ability, you will win. And yeah, you can just plan all around morale. There's different ways to beat the enemy. Normally, you never actually kill them with troop size. You kill them by just crushing the morale to 0 and they give up the fight. And so learning how each of those abilities interacts with that core mechanic and learning how certain things cause people to be confused, which makes charging in the single general combat more powerful, is very satisfying. There's a lot of other kind of, I would say, somewhat unintended mechanics, like how you could kind of cheese things with the bridge and gate battles by purposely holding choke points, but not in quite a way I think they intended. It does allow for a really good variety of things. So we play through every single difficulty. I will say that if you've never played a game like this before, even an RTS, it does a really good job of teaching you the basics. It will not teach you how to use the abilities well. That's something the game is not going to handhold you on. And you're going to have to figure out if things like getting more supplies after a battle, or recruiting more troops, or training your officers is more important. Some of it comes down to playstyle. Some things are specific to the battle you're in. Some of them are long-term bonuses. So it's not going to hold your hand with those things. It will tell you what they do, but not whether or not they're useful. So it is always interesting to try some of the one-off things. Like, chat loves the fire castles. Some of the inventions in this game are absolutely ridiculous. And are so fun. I even like that the main campaigns have a multi-choice. So you're going to hit a couple of different stages where you can pick one of 3. So if you want to see more story, you could play all 3 of them as you go through, or you just pick whatever one gives you the best bonuses. However you want to do it, I think the game offers enough variety that there is a lot of replay factor with this. We probably spent upwards of 50, 60 hours going through both campaigns on multiple difficulties, and it was pretty much fun up until the end. So I think from the standpoint of non-spoilery things, my final thought as the summarization is, this is still one of my favorite games of all time. It's honestly only competing with a very rare few games on the PlayStation 2 that I would consider maybe I liked more. And we're talking like top 1 out of like hundreds of games played that I'm willing to put Kessen 2 that high on the list. I feel like it's in my top 3. It might be even my top 2. Wow, chat. What a game. It was very fun for the most part, but what we have to be able to spoil some things, because there are elements of the game that are very central to the plot, in particular towards the end of the game, that not so good. So I really like the early difficulties, how it let you kind of learn the characters. It makes you literally take a tutorial. You kind of go through, you crush the enemy generals, you learn how all those mechanics work. I loved the flip side where you got to play as the enemy generals. I love seeing their story compared to the main characters. I don't think theirs was as... See, that's where an interesting thing. I feel like Cao Cao is not a very compelling character, but Liu Bei's plot was pretty bad overall. If you're playing the game for plot, you're going to be kind of disappointed. So I feel like, you know, Liu Bei is like doing all these things for Diao Chan. He doesn't seem to care about the people at like all throughout the whole campaign. Honestly, he felt like the villain. Even when I first played the game, he felt like the bad guy in the situation. And playing as Cao Cao, you still feel like a bad guy. You're just a different type of bad guy. And he just seems kind of angry all the time and very moody. So I feel like from that standpoint, neither of the characters were all that compelling, but man, does the combat carry the game. Man, do the cutscenes carry the game. Oh, it's just so good. But yeah, they try to mix some things up, I guess, with naval combat. They try to make it so it's not just all army-based things. I do like the idea of it. Obviously, we saw a lot of flaws with the pathing. I think that will probably be the game's biggest weak point, is pathing. Both in the army and the naval battles, you could purposely get enemies stuck on each other. Your own units will get stuck on each other. Sometimes when you enter squad battle, when you've engaged with an enemy unit, they just refuse to enter the battle, so you can't use their abilities. So stuff like that is really annoying to me. And it's just like, it's such a shame. Like, it was really close to being like a perfect game. That's where it's like hard to say it's number 1, because it does have its flaws, but it's still overall really good. When the highs of this game, like the high points, are so much higher than a lot of other games that we've played, seen, talked about, probably played in childhood. Again, phenomenal game. But we have to, you know, take off the rose-tinted glasses, as it were, and admit that there's flaws with the game. And I think that's just one of the biggest issues. The pathing is just ridiculously trolly. Like, you could tell 2 units to go north, and then they'll, like, dummy bonk on each other, and then they'll both head south. And you're like, how did that even happen? or the worst, I think, offender, the only thing that I think annoyed me slightly more than the pathing when you try to go through, like, really tight areas was the magnet suction your units had into engaging in battle. Which is kind of weird, given there's a mechanic to specifically use your archers to pelt the enemy and share XP. It's weird that that's in the game, and that's an intended feature, but then, like, your dumb allies want to just melee as the bow unit a lot? Yeah, it's very weird. I'm like, no, I did not tell you to engage with that officer. I told you to go around the enemy. So between their, like, suction hands and the pathing, some of the battles end up being a little annoying when they should have just been fun all the way through. So it is amusing getting the enemy stuck. Obviously, it's a flaw of the game. I don't know if I would change it for them, but man, oh man, some of the ally pathing needed some help. Remember, chat, when I was playing as Liu Bei and we were in the Zhu Rong battle, and Liu Bei just refused to engage the enemy for like 2.5 solid minutes? We have clips on that on Twitch. It happened. He just went on his little merry journey. He literally went the opposite direction of the people he was fighting and would not let me do any abilities. I'll remember that for a lifetime, chat. So there's definitely some weird moments with the game where it just doesn't quite click. But, yeah, I think the appeal of being able to aim, like, your charge, your raid, your rush attacks, your volleys, all of that is done in such a phenomenal way. I really wish other games had this kind of formula. I'm so sad. It's, like, almost literally the only game like it. Obviously, there's the first Kessen game, but I don't think it has quite the scale of abilities. It's much more dialed back from what I've heard. I technically own Kessen 1. I haven't played it. I've always been afraid to touch it in the sense that I'm playing, like, what is presumably just a much better game where they've had more years to work on it and they got to fine-tune it. So I don't know how much I want to go backwards in that kind of system. But who knows, maybe we'll check out the first game in the future. I know the game after it in the series is nothing like Kessen 2, and I'm not gonna lie, that was one of my biggest disappointments of all time. I don't even think I completed more than 2 stages of Kessen 3. I was so disappointed. Instead of the giant squad army battles that we saw with, like, literally, like, 90 versus 90 and stuff like that, it's literally like a Dynasty Warriors, you, like, square triangle with, like, a unit that just is in the shape of a squad. It was very lame, and I did not get very far in it for those very obvious reasons. They still had a mode where you could go in as the general and do, like, your raid attacks, but then they also made it like Dynasty Warriors, where, like, you'd also lose a lot of health. And I'm glad that when you use those abilities, your general cannot just randomly die in the battle. So I'm glad none of that was in Kessen 2 in particular. So I'm worried, you know, some of that could be in Kessen 1 or the sequel. But I just feel like overall the war mechanics of this game blow everything out of the water. I have not played another RTS quite like this. I've played RTSs on PlayStation before, but they are not anywhere near to how much fun it is for this. Is the game balanced? No. Is it still fun? Oh yeah. It feels so rewarding to exploit both the game mechanics and unintended bugs of some of those things. It feels like you really have a lot of control over how things go, minus some of the pathing. Now, in some scenarios, you could rotate the army around. Naval battles, you don't have that luxury, so some of the pathing there is, like, ultra wonky. But it is what it is. But I think overall, chat, what did you enjoy about the game? What did you think about the game? I hope you enjoyed it all the way through now that you've seen it through. I think chat will fully agree, though, that ending for beating the game on Expert for the enemy army campaign, that was one of the worst endings of all time. It was literally one line of dialogue, credits. Like, that was truly not worth it. That ending was possibly the worst ending. We might give it a special reward at the end of the year for worst game ending of all time. I'm willing to state it. It's really hard to beat one line of dialogue, cut to credits. It was pretty bad. It was pretty bad. The other cutscenes were super fun. We didn't even skip those cutscenes on the replay. Because I'm like, if you're playing Kessen 2, if you don't see this person suddenly launch into the air and shoot a fireball at somebody for no reason in the middle of a conversation, are you really playing Kessen 2? We can't skip those cutscenes. It's like skipping Sea Mama in Shadow Hearts, like Chad is mentioning. It's like, you can't do that. You have to go through there. Wonder if they just ran out of time, money, by the time they got to South Expert ending. Maybe. I was hoping they were gonna have a third force to play, given they set up for it, and they had generals for it. They could have done it, but they didn't do it. Even if it was just a short campaign, like 4 or 5 missions, that would have been kind of fun. Like 2 naval battles, 3 ground battles. Kind of an interesting scenario. Again, they had all the characters. It's not like they had to remodel, so just kind of sad. But yeah, we're hearing more of the phenomenal music again. But yeah, chat love Mandate of Heaven. I mean, I don't know, chat. Like the cutscene where you fly into heaven to defy God, or random ninja ambush in the forest. It's a contender for which one I like more. They're just so ludicrous, and it's just amazing. They're classics. I would watch those again all day. Yeah, it's just so ridiculous. You know, burn chibi burn. It's a classic. But yeah, I think I covered basically everything. I mostly just wanted to say, like, as I said before, I do feel like Liu Bei feels like a villain the whole time. I don't think that was intended, but he definitely feels like a bad person. And then when like Zhao Yun comes back to save him, I'm like, no, Liu Bei, no, don't go help Liu Bei. He's terrible. Have you heard his war speeches? They're some of the worst we've ever heard. I mean, some of his comebacks to the villain were essentially no you. Like, they were that bad. It was like, come on, inspire me a little bit here. They're like, I don't care if I'm causing natural disasters. I gotta get Diao Chan. Like, it's just like, shut up, stupid. This is why your army abandoned you partway through the game. You deserve that. Oh man. But yeah, I think that's about it. I mean, overall, as I just gonna reiterate, I do think there are issues with the combat, in particular with the pathing. I do like that the difficulties don't make the enemy spam the abilities. I feel like they probably could have used like a little more frequency on expert mode with some of their skills. But I think overall the challenge was probably what it should have been. So if you don't know all the hidden mechanics, those final battles would probably be hard. Now, we managed to level ourselves basically to the max for most of our generals, and we absolutely abused them. I also do like the fact that you could choose who levels more by either like sharing the kill or purposely arrowing people or purposely making them fight more generals. So I like that even in like playing the same campaign again, you could kind of challenge yourself to use new generals. So I kind of like that. There's a couple of ones that will always be core, but then there's like the secondary generals, whoever levels up there. It could be almost anybody that would be useful. So, for example, we could focus on our strategists and focus for spells and the low difficulties. Or if you just want to crush everybody with Guan Yu and Zhang Fei and Liu Bei's campaign, it's all there. So I do like that there's a lot of different ways to approach those battles. I like the different strategies. Chat loved the mines. Every time we had mines as an option to defeat the enemy, of course we used the mines. I like, too, that we could choose to recruit some people, or we have a pick of choices for recruits. And overall, I was pretty happy with it. I'm kind of sad we got characters like Zhu Rong with the elephants so late in the game. That would have been much more fun if we had like another 4 or 5 stages with them. Chat will forever remember the box. They're in the box, chat. It's over. They're not escaping the box. It's too powerful. She is just too strong, chat. GG. Hawk said no. Yeah, they're going in a different box. It's a casket. They're going in the casket after they go in the box. But yeah, I think that's it for my final thoughts, chat. So if you want to say anything for the people potentially listening to this on YouTube or Twitch, feel free to share your true final thoughts. But I think from my standpoint, is there anything else I forgot to mention? We talked about the voice acting, the cutscenes, the combat. Can't recommend the game enough overall. I didn't look to see how easy this was to get outside of a physical copy. I do have a physical copy of the game, so I guess I'm blessed in that sense, because I'm literally playing it on like PlayStation 3. but it was kind of nice. I am a little I guess one thing I'll add, I am a little disappointed that after you unlock the expert mode difficulties, there's nothing for actually beating the game on expert, other than that extremely terrible ending if you do the enemy campaign. So I feel like they kind of dropped the ball at the very end. And I guess because this is Final Thoughts, we do have to bring it up. That expert stage, that expert final stage for the enemy general, wow, that was one of the worst stages in the game. That was so unfun. Yeah, that final stage was so unfun. I'm glad the rest of the game was not like that final stage. I did not find it enjoyable to fight an army game where there's a huge map, you don't know where anybody is, and like every turn in the mountains or forests is trapped or ambushes. That was so not fun, especially with how morale works in that game. Yeah, we came close to it. Now, we did manage to beat the game without doing a retry, with the exception of, like, I think, ironically enough, easy mode Leo Bay, where I timed out, which I thought was funny. I thought that was funny more than anything else, and I was kind of okay with it. But yeah, we beat the expert modes without doing a retry. If we did, quote-unquote, lose a general, we just straight up restarted for real. So we know it's possible to beat without retries. Oh, that reminds me. Oh, no, that was more than 6 mines, Kirk. It was 3 in the bottom left, 3 in the far left, 3 at the top, 2 in the upper right. That's why I was getting so tilted. There were so many, Kirk. That's why I was saying, yeah, that's why I was like, I'm like, is there really 8? No, there were 9. There was more. I was like, come on. Oh, and I forgot the bridge. Sorry, I think there were 10. There were actually 10. I lied. I forgot about the bridge in the bottom right. Had mines, of course. So yeah, I think other than that, most of it was doable. I guess that's one thing I did forget to say with the retry mechanic. Retry isn't just a simple redo of the battle. You do keep all of the experience that you gained, and I think the fame as well. So if you are struggling on the high difficulties and you do wipe for whatever reason, you do keep that general XP and the extra fame, and fame is troops, just for a conversion for people that aren't familiar with the game. So it does make it so that eventually you should just be able to brute force some of the higher difficulties if you don't know some of the nuances of the strategy, which I think is an interesting choice. I don't know if I love it or hate it. I know for my playthrough, it felt dirty, so I didn't like to do it, but there's nothing wrong with that mechanic in general. In fact, if you just want to get to like the uber powerful generals, nothing stops you from just failing the first missions over and over again until you hit max rank and just destroy everybody. So if you really want to see everybody's final abilities, by all means, there is quote-unquote technically a way to grind it out in case the RTS is too difficult. So honestly, I feel like it had basically everything for people of all play levels and skills, sets, etc. So honestly, I don't really see a reason not to recommend it, other than like if you do find, you might find the pathing slightly annoying, but that's like very small in the scale and scope of how ridiculous the cutscenes are and how fun the combat is itself when you get to the combat. So those are my official final thoughts. So with that, chat, hope you enjoyed Kessen 2. Maybe we'll visit the first one in the future. Maybe we'll play again on normal difficulty, Leo-based campaign, since we beat literally every other difficulty for both characters. But other than that, I have to say, probably going to be hearing this game at the end of the year awards. Probably going to hear it for a few different categories. And with that, we're going to conclude our final thoughts. So if you did watch to this point, I'd just like to thank you again for watching. To see you again next time.